All right, hi everybody. Welcome to our Pet Talk series and our Humane Law Enforcement lecture on a day in the life of a Humane Law Enforcement Officer. We have a few Humane Law Enforcement Officers here this evening who are going to walk us through what a day might be like for them and some of the typical cases that they might come across. So we're really excited to have that today. I'm going to go ahead and put in the link some other events that we have coming up here at San Diego Humane Society. We have a positive training for horses coming up on July 15th. And then in August, on August 3rd, we have our Dogs on Deployment Pet Talk, which will discuss what people do with their pet dogs when they have to deploy. So it's an organization that helps solve some of those problems. So I'm going to hand it off to our Humane Law Enforcement team, who will walk us through their presentation this evening. So thank you guys so much for being here. There are going to be moments where you can ask questions either in the chat or you can unmute yourself to ask your question, but we ask that you please wait until those question opportunities arise within the presentation, and our speakers will let you know when those are. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now.
Okay, today's topic is going to be on a day in the life of a San Diego Humane Law Enforcement Officer. I am going to be speaking today along with Corporal Rodriguez, who will introduce herself in just a moment. I'm a sergeant with the San Diego Humane Law Enforcement Department. I began in 2012. I actually did my first ride along in 2011 and realized it was definitely a fit for me. I began as a community service officer in 2012 to 2013. At the time, we didn't have as many contracts, so there were cities that we would do humane law enforcement in as far as cruelty and neglect, even if we didn't have the animal control contract. So because there were less space on the team, there was a community service officer program at the time that people would join and kind of learn and be ready when an opening came. And so that's what happened for me. I ended up in Oceanside from 2013 until 2015, and I ended up transferring down and becoming sergeant. I actually did between 2013 or 15 and 2018. I left and went on maternity, but also was doing kind of like we call it a PRN. So per request needed, where I stayed sworn and I did backgrounds and some other things as needed. And then I came back full time in 2018 as a sergeant of the San Diego A team. San Diego is so large that we do have it split into two teams, A and B. And so with A, we cover the majority of San Diego City above the 8, with some exceptions below, especially the coastlines. We also cover the city of Santee and El Cajon. So also on the team is Officer or Corporal Rodriguez, and she will introduce herself now.
Hi, thank you for being here. So I am Corporal Rodriguez. I got hired with the San Diego Humane Law Enforcement Department on 2018. I did get promoted on 2020 as corporal. I am on the A team, so like Sergeant Price said, we do all upper San Diego and East County. I don't have much else, just I'll continue now.
Okay, so what humane officers do, basically, when I found out we were going to be giving this discussion, they wanted us to discuss a typical day. And what's kind of funny about a typical day is that it's never going to be the same. I mean, every single day is kind of a new adventure, because dependent on whether it's summer, spring, fall, winter, there's going to be a variety of different things. Whether, you know, hot weather brings out rattlesnakes and we're relocating them to canyons close by, or people are leaving dogs in vehicles thinking that they'll be right out, not realizing how quickly temperatures rise in vehicles. Those types of calls increase in the summer, they decrease in the winter. In addition, we get calls that increase with basically our transplant city and the fact that it's a vacation town. So we see a rise in dog bites during spring break, summer, winter break, and we see kind of a rise in basic temperature related calls in the summer. It doesn't get too cold here, so we don't deal with a whole lot of freezing situations, but the cold kind of brings out its own version of kind of calls. So we've all learned that summer is definitely our peak season, but wintertime is just as busy with different types of things. So what we do is on a day-to-day basis, we're going to be responding to animal cruelty and reports of, you know, people catching an animal and they have it confined in their home, dogs that they drove by and it was running loose and almost in traffic, the neighbor's dog that is always out and one day, you know, they're concerned it's going to get hit. Anytime in the state of California there's a bite to a human and there's blood to saliva contact, we do have to do a bite quarantine, which is basically isolating that animal because it has bitten, and essentially it's for rabies control. So if an animal gets to the point in that virus when they are exhibiting aggression, then they're actually shedding the illness, and they have about 72 hours to live. So the state of California extends it out 10 days. We have an owner isolate an animal if they're able to, or we'll isolate the animal ourselves for a period of 10 days from the date of the bite. And then if the animal is healthy on the 10th day, we know it wasn't shedding rabies at the time of the bite. So that's a big part of our day. We assist the public in the event that somebody is taken to the hospital and has no one to watch their animal, or if there's an accident and the victims have been transported and somebody needs to transport the animal. Anything like that, someone's arrested with their dog with them, that's an emergency board process. And so we pick up those animals and we hold them and care for them for up to 2 weeks for that owner, at which time they typically are reclaimed or they can go up for adoption. Another thing that we'll do pretty often is respond to any type of public assistance calls. So if somebody's calling and there's an emergency in their home, their cat is stuck in the radiator or the dog is stuck in the fence, that's something we'll respond to immediately. So it really is one of those things where you could shake dice on what our call is going to be that day and what our day will be like. So I will give it to Corporal Rodriguez to cover the kind of the basic cruelty and neglect reports.
Okay, so every day we never know what's going to happen. Every day is a different calls. We never know what to expect. For cruelties, we do have what's a hoarding case, and that is when an owner, you know, they hoard animals, and these animals are not in the best condition. We do welfare checks on them, make sure that if there's multiple animals in the home, let's say the owner has 20 cats, we want to make sure those 20 cats are receiving proper care. They have, we also have illegal tethering, which is illegal to tether dogs for over 3 hours. And they do have to have water and shelter available. So we do get multiple calls about tethering. Neglect would be I feel personally that neglect is our #1 call for, you know, just a dog or cat, you know, not getting the necessary care, which could be vet care. Their dog's sick, they can't afford it. They call us out to do a welfare check. Grooming, a cat may be matted and it ends up getting really bad. So we do have to conduct welfare checks for those type of calls. There's intentional and malicious harm to an animal. So there's two different kinds of calls for this. It could be in progress, which means it's happening right now. I have to get there right away. And so that would be us responding immediately. And then there is an intentional where it happened 2 days ago, a week ago, but someone's just reporting it now. So we do a full investigation on that case and see if it's an actual cruelty. Hot dogs, Sergeant Price mentioned it a bit. It's when dogs are left in vehicles and in an unattended vehicle, it's hot out, there's no water, and the dogs are just declining. And if we don't get them out, then something's going to happen to that dog, or that dog may not make it. So it depends. We do get calls when it's not hot out there. They have water, the windows down. People don't like animal owners leaving their dogs in the vehicle, but their dog's completely fine. They're in shade. So for those type of calls, we'll just leave a notice and talk to the owner and educate them. But the bad ones are when it's really hot and they have no way of getting to water, no shade, then we could go ahead and seize animals. And when we rarely get, but there's some sexual assault cases that we do get. We do respond to natural disasters, but I could pass it to Sergeant Price for that.
So after 1 year on as a sworn humane officer, you can begin on our department training behind fire lines. And so that entails being fully equipped in fire gear, fully trained in your gear, and attending so many hours a month of fire training. We respond to fire training in addition to natural disasters, like Corporal Rodriguez said. So in addition to our fire team, who basically is going to respond in the event that there's an evacuation, say a fire is coming in through Alpine, and there's a neighborhood of residents that need to be evacuated immediately, and half of them were at work, but they are calling in because they've got their dog or their cat or their turtle or their hamster, or their 15 to 30 horses still on the property. We will deploy, and we will, when possible, based on our fire scouts, because there's multiple roles in fire, but we will respond out, and if we are able to grab up the animals with the owner's permission, we bring them back to a receiving site where everybody is tagged and documented so that they can be reunited. In other instances, we don't have permission from the owner, but the fire's moving and it goes into exigency. So in those cases, we can remove those animals for their health and safety. And then there's the other instance where we know that the fire is changing directions. However, the evacuations won't be lifted. So these animals need food and water. So that is called shelter in place. In addition to the fires, we have an emergency rescue tech team, and they do technical rescues. They train on basically swift water rescue. They have all the gear. And we've deployed recently to North Carolina for a hurricane, where officers were able to gear up and go into the field and access animals that were stranded that you couldn't otherwise get. In addition, they will also respond to horses that have, kind of gone down, or they've slid down a ravine or a cliff, and it's something that's going to require an apparatus to bring them back up. So they're trained in that, and they have, lots of different implements, thanks to donors who have reached out and been able to provide these kinds of things so that we can respond and we can help. So basically, the presentation is going to cover those different things, from the animal control, controlling the animals to protect the public, to animal cruelty, which is kind of controlling the public to protect animals, and then of course emergency response, where we've gone all over the country and nation and provided support and helped out. And so we'll kind of cover the training that goes into all of these different realms of our job, because again, you can have your day planned and a fire comes out, or it's flooding in the Tijuana River Valley or something like that, and we have to activate these special response teams. So it just kind of goes into how our job really is never predictable. Okay, so Corporal Rodriguez will now cover basically our powers, our legal right to exercise our job duties.
Yeah, so when we get hired, we do have to take a course which is called TC 832. It's powers to arrest. It's a 40-hour course that we have to take in order for us to be out there in the public and to get sworn in as law enforcement officers. It's 5 days where we send officers out, they take this training, we make sure we know every aspect of being able to use our powers to arrest and enter properties, and when's the right time, when it's basically the legality of it. And after that, we do have to take a quiz that's 100 questions in order to be able to pass that and make sure we understand everything. And that includes, that helps us because we do get a lot of cruelty calls, and there's times where we can't enter a property. So this just covers everything that we need to know. Oh, sorry. Uh-oh, I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. There you go. And then Sergeant Price, do you want to cover Penal Code 830?
Well, based on time, I think we should just kind of keep going because
Okay.
I think we got a late start, but these are the codes in which we train under and that we enforce under. And so we are not peace officers under the state of California. However, we are sworn to the state of California under Corporations Code 14502, and that gives us full police officer powers when it comes to investigating cruelty and neglect. So we have power to arrest, we have power to write search warrants. We do need the assistance of a peace officer to execute search warrants. However, basically we do cases from the bottom up with the assistance of others, and we all specialize in which we'll get into, but in the laws that govern basically animal treatment throughout the state of California and the municipal codes within the cities that we enforce.
So for the next slide, we're gonna start talking about, if you see the pictures, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm sharing the screen right now, so it's kind of hard to see. But Sergeant Price, you can let me know if there's a question. We'll go through the pictures and see if there's an interest in, if you guys want to know a story or a background to one. But most of these calls are going to be wildlife and rescues. Do you want to speak on any of these that you worked on?
I'll just highlight the top left. If I can read it, this was a call for rattlesnakes. So we do remove rattlesnakes. We try to educate the public as much as possible the importance of southern diamondback rattlesnakes within Southern California. They are an apex predator and they have a job to do as far as rodent control and disease control. And they do not want to mess with us, and that's why they have a rattle. They evolved the rattle to give a very stern warning. So anytime someone comes upon one, they can call us, as long as it's, if they're on a hike, they should just move on. But if it's in their home or their office or blocking them from getting in their vehicle, we will get there within the shortest priority time we have, which is 30 minutes. So one of them that we responded to, the person had already kind of put it in the bucket, which in that kind of situation, you've already diffused the threat, because that's what we do, is we place them in a bucket gently and then we relocate them within a half mile so that they can thrive in their own area. But we responded to one and it said, I think it says
danger, live rattlesnake. Inside, do not open unless your animal control or Steve Irwin.
And we all kind of got a laugh about that. I think that's hanging in a few offices. But yeah, this is kind of just a collage of a lot of things that we cover. After this one, we're going to have more stories to go with the with the pictures, but I just thought I'd share that one because it's kind of funny.
The third and fourth picture I could kind of explain as well. Unfortunately, that's me on a coyote trap. So we were trying to trap a coyote that was injured, and the trap kept getting stuck. So I had to go in there because it's a big trap. I had to go in there and fix it, and I was getting trapped. I couldn't back up anymore because they closed on me. So I had my partner open that for me. The next one is the coyote. I don't think that's the same coyote that we caught on that trap, but we do not remove wildlife, or we do not take wildlife unless it's injured or sick. And this coyote was had mange all over, and that spreads easily. So we want to make sure to treat it. We take it to Project Wildlife, either in Ramona or in San Diego, and they'll get treated. And then they'll go ahead, and if they're healthy enough to be released, they'll go ahead and release them. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and there's like individual stories that we'll be speaking about. So this is one of the calls that I went to. We got a call stating that there was a large bird stuck on the tree. Me and Corporal Rhodes attended this, and it was an actual horned owl, and he had fishing wire stuck on his all over his body actually, and he couldn't get away. He was trying to fly, and he just couldn't fly away. We didn't have nothing long enough to be able to cut him free, so we used a long branch and put a knife. So sometimes we have to use the stuff that we have if we don't have the proper stuff at the moment. So we used the knife on top of it, and was able to cut it. And when we were able to catch the owl and free him, he did have some injuries, so we had to take him to Project Wildlife. And I believe he made it and was released afterwards. The left picture, it's hard to see, but it's a gopher snake. He had netting all over, and this is very common with gopher snakes and also rattlesnakes. It's a little harder to deal with rattlesnakes, just for the obvious reasons that they're venomous. But for cases like this, when they're gopher snakes or any other snakes that are not, or that doesn't put us in danger, we can go ahead and hold them and cut the netting ourselves. And this snake was actually completely fine. So we released it in the spot in the backyard of that's actually a yard right there from the people that called us. And they allowed us to release the snake on the spot. So he made it. The second one, Sergeant Price will speak about. Want me to play the video first?
I'll have you play it in just a second.
Okay.
So this was, a good example of we cannot predict our day. We don't know what's coming. And even if, I basically, my 9-year anniversary is coming up. And if somebody in animal welfare or anything like that tells you they've seen it all, they've done it all, you can probably consider them kind of a rookie, because we never stopped seeing new things. This was, completely new to me, to the point that I was a little bit stumped as to what to do at first. But essentially, I got a call from a deputy sheriff in El Cajon. They had arrested someone who completely separate charges, warrants, something totally different, but they were going through his belongings, trying to, collect his items. And they found hidden in his stuff, in one of kind of a big Tupperware, was 12 live lobsters that he had just illegally caught that morning. So I'm responding to it, and it's in El Cajon, and basically kind of wondering how I'm going to deal with this situation, because I don't, at this time, as I'm en route, know that they've been illegally sourced, or that, I don't know the scenario. If someone's arrested and they legally, rightfully own animals, we provide the service I mentioned before, which is emergency boarding. It's 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks of caring for those animals until they can be reunited with the owner, or the owner can sign them over to someone else or us. So I respond, and I'm discovering that these animals were illegally fished that morning, and that he had no right to them. And basically, if they're not back in the sea very soon, they will perish. And so I loaded them up in a box as quick as I could. I took all the information. I got the event number from sheriff so that we could, you know, make sure we had everything together. And I drove from El Cajon to Oceanside, and then I walked them down the pier, as people were asking questions and wondering, and I'm trying to answer questions. So you might hear some of the audio. Some of the fishermen were getting really close, kind of watching me as to where they were going. But these lobsters, most of them were undersized. A couple of them were huge and weren't oversized, but none of them had been illegally caught, and none of them belonged where they were. So I had the legal right to return them to the sea. And so that's what this video is.
No. Huh? No, they were seized.
Those are too little?
Some of them. They were not gonna. They were gonna die where they ended up. So, without being food.
Look at that big daddy.
Yeah, there's a new one. Trying to single him out.
So the next pictures you see here is of a skunk. Again, netting is involved. He's completely wrapped. Unfortunately, most of these cases, you know, their defense system is to spray you. But what we as officers do and learned the hard way is, you know, you walk over to the skunk and be as slow as possible, and at the same time quickly tuck the tail with a towel, and as long as you hold the tail down, he won't be able to spray you. And the officer in this case was able to cut all the wire off, or the netting from the skunk. And he was a young one, and mom was around. So mom was around the corner. She kept coming out and kept going back inside the bush. So when the skunk was released, the skunk went directly to mom, and they left. Here is a small clip. So I'll go ahead and play that now. So fortunately for this one, he wasn't injured, so we were able to release on the spot. In some cases, we do have to transport him to Project Wildlife, just because they might have like an injury, or if we see them limping, or just they're not walking, we do have to take those in. Or if mom's not around, as whatever wildlife, doesn't have to be a skunk, if they're too little and we know on their own they're gonna die, we also transport those animals to Project Wildlife. Will they'll be treated until they're old enough and healthy enough to be released. So here's the next slide of examples of the work we do. Sergeant Price, do you have any that you want to speak on?
So if you look at top right, there's a fawn pit bull who unfortunately got a little too curious about a rattlesnake. And luckily that puppy it was basically a dry bite, and the snake did not inject venom. And so while the puppy had a very uncomfortable reaction, we're hoping that he learned his lesson, and he'll be okay. If you slide in from him past the injured falcon, we get to another dog that's kind of got a little bit of a swelling issue. That was actually a spider bite. And another one where we intervened, the owner was kind of freaking out. We needed to help them out, and we were happy to do so. And it ended up being a good outcome. So, sometimes people are really, they don't know what to do, and a spider bite's not something that happens every day. So that's something that we were able to help them out with. We've got also on the left middle, there's Corporal Gannis with a large pig. He's attempting to get into a crate, but that was a pig that was at large, and so it escaped its property on a farm and was kind of running down the street. So somebody saw it. The owner wasn't aware that the pig got out. So, we never really know what kind of calls we're going to get, but sometimes it's going to be trying to get a pig. And so as we continue, we'll have some more videos, but this is just basically a screenshot of what you could, if you come home and you do this job and someone asks what your day was like, that's where your kind of memory goes, because it can be complete chaos. And from one call to the next, you're dealing with all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there's times where we're in the field and we do 20 calls a day because there's so many emergencies with wildlife and domestic animals. And then there's times where we just do 4 calls because we're stuck on a cruelty that we had to do investigation. We had to interview and interrogate someone. So we never know what's going to happen on a daily basis.
Okay, so when I was talking about dogs getting their heads stuck in fences, the bottom right is a perfect example. Unfortunately, that dog wanted to see what was going on and bark at passersby, and it didn't work out. So we went out there and we helped free that guy. To the left of that is a fawn that was found. A lot of times, unfortunately, the mother deer will be away from the baby and she kind of tries to hide the baby. If you see a fawn, you can always call Project Wildlife and report it, but you don't necessarily want to intervene because we have found that in most times it's like a mother rabbit where they hide the babies and they only go to them to feed them, because as a prey species, they do have to stay away and not attract any more attention. So that was a case of a fawn that the mother may have been, something may have happened to her, but we were spotted out to that one. To the left of the fawn, you're gonna see my hand holding basically a newt, which is a little amphibian, but that was a rattlesnake call, that the woman had a rattlesnake in her home and she was absolutely terrified. And sometimes it's a rattlesnake, sometimes it's not. And she was really embarrassed and wanted to take a photo so that she could tell her friends, how silly she felt. But, in the moment, she thought it was a rattlesnake. And so that's our job to do. And so, but again, we can't really go into any phone call or email or anything that generates a call for service and assume what it's going to be, because we never know. If you look at the top left, you see a coyote that was brought in again because unfortunately it was injured beyond, the ability to heal on its own. They're wild, they're hardy, they want to survive, but sometimes, it's something where we do have to intervene and either get them rehabilitation or, be able to help them with suffering. To the right of that is a raccoon in a trunk. And that was a situation where an officer responded on call to Project Wildlife for something unrelated. They had an animal that they got a call for. They were taking it to Project Wildlife at night, and someone flagged them down and was like, I have something, and opened their trunk, and it was a raccoon. So it really is kind of one of those things where you got to be on your toes for sure, and you got to be ready. And to the right of the raccoons, you see chickens that were seized, and we're trying to get them in cages and get them organized. To the right of that is another skunk stuck in something. Skunks are constantly stuck in things. They're rooters, they're nocturnal, they have poor vision. And so basically, in addition to having an incredible defense of smell, that enabled them biologically and evolutionarily to not really have a lot of other senses as heightened. So if they sniff something like a snow cone cup or something like that, they can easily become stuck. And that will generate calls. So a lot of times, if we're really, really careful, we're able to free them without being sprayed. Other times spraying comes with the territory, and we all have a lot of Febreze at our desks and different things to kind of combat the smell. But you know, it's kind of part of the day because skunks are really prevalent in this area, and they're nocturnal. We are not. So most times when a public citizen sees that, they're not used to seeing a skunk. And so sometimes we come out and we assess and it's okay, and hey, you know, it's a juvenile and it's still kind of getting used to being nocturnal and on its own. He's okay, just leave him alone. Other times, if you look at the bottom left, one in before my vicious rattlesnake, you'll see a little skunk. He's actually stuck under a grill. He has his hand stuck in one of those clamping rat traps. And so we definitely try to get out to the public to be careful with where they put traps for vermin, or what they consider vermin, because wildlife can stumble into that stuff. And so I was able to go out there and get him. I didn't try to take it off of him. I transported him to Project Wildlife so that they could sedate him and get it off the right way. But these are just more examples kind of the animal control and emergency response rescue calls that we'll get. And these are all pretty much our high priority, got to get there right now, you know, exigency type calls. This is one recently where somebody heard a kitten crying in a storm drain. We will get these. Unfortunately, there are times when cats will adapt to certain areas and they will find kind of a, you know, a sewer system where they live a successful feral life, and you hear them meowing or crying from one area and it could be a mile away. These are tough calls. We have to kind of assess them. But this one was, you know, exactly how it came out is there was literally a kitten stuck. He had fallen into this manhole or this drain off of the roadside. And so we went out there, we assessed him. As you can see in the top left, he was just pretty much in there crying and alone. And we were able to have Public Works come out and remove the manhole top. And we had an officer go in there and he was able to extract him pretty quick. And so that little guy had a good outcome. He was taken back to the nursery and made to feel a whole lot better.
So this is the video of a rattlesnake. This is a red diamond rattlesnake. We often get these during summer every day, at least twice a day, if not more. So let me go ahead and play it for you guys.
That's okay.
Get back, Hugh.
I am. Come on, Snake. The big ones are harder.
My cat didn't want to deal with him.
Yeah. Where are you gonna release him at?
Hold on.
So for these guys, it's gotten to the point where we're so used to getting these calls, we just go in there, scoop it up real quick, put it on the bucket, and relocate it somewhere where there's not too many people on a canyon nearby. We try to keep rattlesnakes as close as possible to where we found them, just because their survival rate is a lot higher. But yeah, we do get multiple calls, a lot of baby rattlesnakes, especially during summer. I think one day we got a total of 11 rattlesnake calls. That's the highest that I've had. But we do get a lot of rattlesnake calls too, where they're actually not rattlesnakes. We do get domestic calls for domestic snakes, like ball pythons. We've got multiple of those. So we do go out to calls where they say or think it's a rattlesnake and it's not, or it's a gopher. Gopher are similar to rattlesnakes. So sometimes if you can't see the tail, you'll confuse it for a gopher and think it's a rattlesnake. Sergeant Price had mentioned how sometimes we'll get a call and we get there and it's not what we think. A lot of times we get calls to rescue an animal that does not need rescuing. So for this call, this Officer Tani, got a call stating that there was a raccoon on the roof and he was stuck. He couldn't go back down. But let me play the video and then you guys will see for yourselves. So as you guys can see, the raccoon actually was able to get down. They normally can. We do get a lot of calls where the reporting party will call us, letting us know, hey, this raccoon or even other wildlife, it has been here for 2 hours, 3 hours, and sometimes it's just hanging around. It knows how to get down. It's just that people worry because they don't think that a raccoon should be out, and they normally are not out in daylight. But we do get calls like this where the animal's not stuck. It could get itself down. We did decide to put this call because we got a call and it said there was a bobcat right in front of their house. It was not moving. Me and my partner were so excited. We're like, oh my God, we're gonna get a bobcat right now. And we're both looking for it. And then the woman comes out screaming, it's right there, it's right there. And I approach it and I'm like, oh, I pick it up this statue. And she starts screaming and goes back inside her house. She thought I grabbed a bobcat with my bare hands. So we had to take a picture. And someone just left a statue and left it out. So you'd be surprised how many calls we get like this. So this is part 1. If you guys have any questions. You guys could go ahead and unmute or type a question.
I have a question for you guys. How often do you have to do trainings to maybe learn new things or refresh? I feel like that's a lot of different species you have to learn about, and I certainly don't know anything about like a lobster or things like that. So how do you guys stay up to date with your information, and how do you tackle that?
So we, as law enforcement, we do CPT, which is continued professional training. Basically, there's really no training that you can get like on-the-job training. You really can't experience and understand a lobster case until you've had one, given to you immediately. But honestly, what keeps us going other than that is we have there's basically national academies. There's different kind of things we can go. As an officer, you're allowed to look up training that you're interested in and put it forth. And we try to, add any and incorporate any training that is coming up or anything extra. We look out for those. We try to stay up on all the new trends. And I mean, there are certain trainings that we by law have to continue. But as far as kind of the animal control stuff, which we've covered so far, which is so random, a lot of that really is on the job training. We can only do so much in a classroom to be able to fully execute that kind of training on a rooftop, scenario. So as far as this section, which we're going to move on to a little bit more of the kind of guided type stuff where you really need to understand exactly what the protocols are going to be. There's not a whole lot of protocols that come with the animal control and the containment and stuff like that. And so I think the message we really want out there with everything we've covered so far as animal rescue, whether it's wildlife or animal, is that we want to assess it. Give us a call. We'll go take a look. It might not be us. It might be Fish and Game. It might not be a situation that we would respond to. It's something we might educate the public on in that scenario. But those ones are very rogue, and we will do our best, but there's a lot of times where we are kind of figuring it out. We've had, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a raccoon that fell through the ceiling and is now in my closet. There's only so much training that you can formally have with this kind of stuff. So I would say that experience plays a big part, but we do try to cover in training as much as we can with this kind of stuff. But as we move forward into kind of the cruelty and the emergency response, that is more strategic, and that's more of there's like a mandated guideline. But as far as the calls that we've covered so far, we can do our best, and we have FTOs who are appointed to be field training officers based on their ability to problem solve and handle these situations, and their, you know, basically ability to tackle things based on any different scenario and be able to adapt. But I would say that this is kind of the area where training can only help you so much, but it's experience too.
Yeah, being out in the field, you're learning every day. And something, if I learn something, I'm passing it down to every officer. Hey, this is what I learned today. This is something we can start doing. So like Sergeant Price said, there's some training. If like for rattlesnake, we do, every officer does have to go through a training to be able to capture rattlesnake, just because that's a high risk. So we do put them through that. They do have to get a rattlesnake be like in front of the trainers beforehand, before they're out in the field. So when they are in the field, they can, if they're not comfortable, they could take it again. And like Sergeant Price said, there could be an FTO right there doing it for them, showing them how again, repeating it until they're comfortable being out there in the field. But besides that, we're learning every day. We're learning new techniques, new animals that we haven't seen. We got what was it, a Mexican lizard that we got that, you know, we've never gotten before, that was venomous as well. So we are learning and adapting. So any other questions? Okay. We'll move on to the, I believe, the cruelty part. Can you guys see that?
Okay, so in this section, we're kind of going to cover basically our responses and the different types of cruelties that we're going to have. Before you are some basically before and afters. The befores are above and afters are below, but these are kind of some of the things that we'll see and mandate and look to have corrected.
So we're gonna speak about common cases. There's some photos here to illustrate that. The first photo, it shows a heat gun. We're looking at the temperature of a vehicle for a dog that's inside a vehicle, and that tells us how hot it's inside the vehicle. The picture below that, it's a welfare check for a dog, where if you see around, there's feces all over, and we will mandate the owner to clean up, just because there's a sanitation issue there. On the bottom left, you'll see a radiograph of a dog. I think it has a broken, there's a break on the leg.
So
and
if you click, if you click further, it might bring them in. It should have descriptions, and I apologize.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
So just click all the way and it should give you everything. Okay, and go back. So my apologies. We, we were working on this to make it as full as possible. So we weren't able to practice everything, but exactly what Corporal Rodriguez said is we have different cases where we've got a hearsay report of cruelty. My neighbor says, or an active in progress. We have a dog in the vehicle, like I'm down at the bay and I can see this dog, no one's been around, it's getting warmer and warmer. So that's kind of an active in progress, or somebody is intoxicated and they're kicking their dog or something like that. And then ongoing cruelty would be something where they've been continually subjecting an animal to something on purpose. And long-term neglect, maybe not so much on purpose, but they're not doing anything about it. So these are kind of, there's really no way to classify any one thing when it comes to the cases that we deal with. And as we've kind of learned to interpret the law and submitted so many cases of so many gray areas, we have learned that these do kind of bleed into each other. But these are the 4 basic breakdowns that we can provide. Is basically, we have a report, my neighbor's doing such and such, or this is happening right now, or this has been going on for such time. So the top one, like Corporal Rodriguez said, was that's the attempt gun into a vehicle. That's a dog that's been left at the bay in the heat. Below that is a case of dogs that I dealt with where the owner had personal drama kind of going on with his parents, and so the dogs in his backyard became an afterthought, and it got really bad for them because they weren't being cared for. The bottom one is someone who simply lost their temper and got really angry and threw a chihuahua. So you can see a compound fracture, and then that is a photo of her acting out how she dropped the dog 2 feet, as opposed to, you know, what the investigation was able to determine. We're now going to play a video of a pretty standard case that was our, you know, the San Diego Humane Society had kind of put this together after the fact. We did get a conviction here, and it was a great outcome. This was a very kind of it wasn't a very straightforward case where this is happening right now. We got it late. The family didn't really want to report it right away. And it was one of those things where we went into it attempting to figure out as much as we could. And luckily for us, and what we, you know, were able to, you know, bring out of everybody in this situation was the truth, which was not great. And so I do give a little bit of a warning on this, but this was a situation where we were proud of the investigation that we had conducted, because we had gotten this a month after the animal had passed away.
I'm Officer Gannis with the Humane Society. Stand up for me. Put your cigarette out. Go ahead and put your cigarette out. Stand up for me. Go ahead and stand up. Put your hands behind your back. You're going to be under arrest.
I went to the residence and made contact with the defendant and interviewed him, and he gave me a full confession stating what he did to the dog, and we went from there.
Yeah, I tried to hit it with a stick, and it started having a seizure,
Okay.
so I killed it.
Okay. What kind of stick was it?
And that's exactly what he described.
Yeah, so this is what he used.
We need to ask him where he walked.
Do you have anything in your pockets that's going to stab me or poke me?
What's the charge for?
Violating Penal Code 597, crimes against animals.
What? Killing?
Yes.
After everything was said and over with, you know, he's in prison. I got justice for the dog. I got justice for the family. You know, if you ever witnessed any animal cruelty, you know, give us a call at the San Diego Humane Society. That way we can investigate it. Because we, you know, animals are voiceless, so we are their voice.
Okay, so here's another kind of difficult one, but this is kind of one of those things where you really can't know until you respond to the report what exactly is happening. There is a penal code for dogs left unattended in a vehicle, and we were able to articulate that while these dogs were not in the vehicle, they were tethered to the vehicle. They were subject to to the vehicle as their surroundings. And unfortunately, these two dogs were in the heat for a substantial amount of time while the owners were in a restaurant, and hadn't checked on them. So I got this call, and initially it's like, well, they're in the bed of a truck. I still treated it like they were in a vehicle, and I'm glad I did, because unfortunately this is an example of what heat stroke looks like. And I apologize if it's, harsh, but I do want you to know that the owner did deal with the consequences legally, as far as leaving an animal unattended. So what's demonstrated here is there's a senior dog who's black in color. He is absorbing more sunlight than the much younger Puggle who's tan. She's okay. She's in distress. She was having diarrhea. But unfortunately, this dog was not able to survive the trauma and the stress of the heat that he was subjected to. And so it was just, it was a hard situation for everybody. And unfortunately, the owners didn't, 80% of what we do is educate, but there are times when education is, we're past that. And so there was legal consequences for this owner. But we do see dogs left in vehicles pretty often. And so that is something that we enforce regularly. And it can be an infraction or a misdemeanor based on whether or not the animal could potentially sustain great bodily harm, or death, which ultimately after about a week with us and medical care, this senior guy didn't pull through. But this is kind of one of the things, unfortunately, that we do have to deal with, and that the public is still, we're still actively trying to educate on, because they don't realize how quick it can get so hot. So this is a time for any questions that you guys have on animal cruelty investigations before we jump to the next topic.
You can put questions in the chat as well, if you think of a question.
So I'll start sharing the screen for the next session. So the question, do you all work from the same location? Me and Sergeant Price, we do work in San Diego. There are officers. There's another shelter in Escondido, and there's one in Oceanside. There's actually two in Oceanside, but we are located in San Diego. So there's different, for our team, we do have multiple zip codes that there's two different teams in San Diego, just as it's a larger area and we cover a lot more. So Team A covers mostly like central parts of San Diego and East County and then there's also Team B that covers more of the south part of San Diego.
Do the laws vary? Like, are they different for each city within San Diego County?
As far as the cruelty calls or the laws that govern animal welfare, it's going to be your California Penal Code, which is going to be the 597 Penal Code, Crimes Against Animals. Each different city and municipal code can have different kind of civil or misdemeanor sections that may differ, but there's also a county code that can trump it. So based on our area, we work with the district attorney that covers it and a city attorney that covers it. So Team A that Corporal Rodriguez and I are on covers, like I said, El Cajon and Santee, and a vast majority of San Diego zip codes that are mainly above the 8, but also along the coastline. Those will either be East County Court or they'll be South County Court, but we basically turn everything into the district attorney who is in the family protection unit. So they've now recognized obviously the link between animal cruelty and family disputes and domestic violence, and they've understood the link that if there is violence in the home that extends to the spouse or the children, it may also extend to the animals. So there's an animal cruelty task force out of our DA unit, which is in the family protection. So all of our DAs are in communication, and every month we actually meet with all of those DAs, whether they're south, north, east, and talk cases. And so while we're in different areas and jurisdictions, we do all communicate as one and determine, whether or not we're going to pursue something, at one level or another. And so we do have the various locations, but we try to stay united.
Okay, the next question is, how do dogs you rescue stay safe traveling in the HLE vans? How are they secured? We do have our HLE trucks do have kennels where they're secured. They actually have a gate, so it's like an actual kennel and a door. So so there's two different types of secure to that. And they do have vents where they have AC. So especially for those hot dogs or the animals that we take from or remove from vehicles, once we transport them in our vehicles, they have AC in the back. So once they get to medical, we're hoping they're a little better. Sometimes they calm down a bit. They start breathing more properly. So it's really important to have that in our vehicle. And I don't think we've had an incident with our HLE trucks. They're pretty safe for animals as long as we close it properly.
And in addition, if we're seizing an animal, we now have to basically document a chain of evidence, just as if a law enforcement officer, was seizing a weapon. And I mean, that's something also that we've done in cases with evidence. We've seized weapons and this and that. So we treat our live evidence just as strategically and importantly, we sign off on who's in possession. And all of that is accounted for so that if we take an animal from an owner out of exigency or out of with a warrant or something like that with probable cause, we still treat it as evidence, as every single possible question we want to have answered and be able to show that chain of custody from A to B to C. So yes, they go into their air-conditioned vehicles and there's documentation and they're never left alone or anything like that.
Do you ever arrive at a scene and have to call police for more backup due to safety concerns?
Yes.
Yeah, that happens often, where most of the times we're riding solo, it's just one officer. If we read a call and we feel that it's already a safety risk or we see something out of the ordinary, we do sometimes also have red flags on the house because we've had issues there. We take backup already. If we think it's going to be that severe where we need police there, we'll call them also to stand by because we might need them. We might need their assistance. So if we get there, we are unaware, it's just a welfare check. We arrive on scene and then we have someone that's super anti-law enforcement and, they claim to have guns in the house and they go inside the property. Our safety is first. We're always gonna remove ourselves from that area. If we can't, we have radios with us. We will call our dispatch to call San Diego PD or whatever police department to come and assist us. So yes, we do work with other agencies.
Okay, so we are going to jump back into the presentation since we are close on time, and then we'll take all remaining questions at the very end. So if you want to go back real quick. Okay, so this one, this was the questions page, which, you know, we answered a lot of questions. We're happy to answer more, but this one I particularly am proud of. This is a situation where it is, I can't say too much. It's a case that is still in proceedings, but it was handled with the utmost respect and the amount of coordination that went into this with San Diego Police Department, San Diego Sheriffs, the DA, and our department. We were able to arrest and hopefully, you know, as court proceedings continue, convict on a situation where, you know, there was a small animal that had been victimized. And so we're proud of this picture because this was a result of months of putting a case together. And that, you know, like I said before, our day can take us all over the place. It can, you know, be very full of one thing, or all your whole day is doing, you know, a search warrant or an arrest warrant. So this is an example of an arrest that went down after, you know, a lot of patience and a lot of investigation.
So we'll be a bit brief right now when it comes to disaster response, just because our time's cutting short. But I've been with the Humane Society for 3 years, and every year we're becoming more prepared for disasters, for fires, which is most common. Summer, we never know when those fires are going to happen. So at the moment, right now, we've been having like monthly trainings for fire disasters or any natural disaster, and Sergeant Price could go into more detail with that. But we've been getting a big team. It's not just HLE officers, there's also volunteers that have been volunteering for years that have been coming to these trainings that are completely trained and certified to now work with or volunteer with us for these disaster response team. Here are some photos of our training. Do you want to speak on some of?
Yeah, so in the top left, it's officers with full PPE, which is often pretty common, whether or not we're going into the aftermath of a fire or the aftermath of a biohazard. The next one to the right at the top in the middle is a dog that had been rescued by the tech rescue team out of a well. And, you know, without our, you know, quick response and all that, you know, training, we may not have been able to achieve that outcome. The top right is training. Below that, we've got an officer in the basket, which again is training. The middle one in the water is our swift water rescue training. The top or the bottom left, I apologize, is a horse that ended up in the family's pool and didn't want to come out. So the tech rescue team responded out to that. So we were really on call 24/7, and we can respond to just about anything. Back in 2018, I responded to the Paradise fires for 6 days because there was a lot of people that weren't able to get back onto property and had animals. And so we were able to pull animals and shelter in place and so many different things. And it's very fulfilling, but it does require a lot of training, and it requires a commitment that, you know, not everybody's able to do or ready for. But I mean, we really stand by and praise the people that we have on staff, because without this department, San Diego Humane could not do the things that we're able to do as far as community outreach with these types of rescues, or you know, any enforcement really. We're really proud of of our people and the sacrifices that are made. The last thing that we can talk about is community engagement, which is pretty much what is happening at this moment. On the left, I have Officer Ollinger and Corporal Gannis, who you might remember from the video with the Chihuahua. They are teaching a class, and on the left, I'm at a booth and kind of schmoozing with a famous dog with the sheriff's department. And so we do try to get out there and explain what we do. And, you know, we're only here to help. And that's the difference that we all wake up in the morning to make. And we can never, ever really know what the day is going to be like, which I hope we've kind of conveyed in this presentation. But we all, you know, we love what we're doing, and we work really hard, and we're open to constant change, and we have no choice when it comes to the environment that we're in and the society and everything like that. So we, you know, we really, it's important that we do what we do, but we also listen and we hear from the public and that we're engaged. So on that note, we will go ahead and take final questions. And just so you know, this is Emma the pig. That last one with the questions was a pig that had been purchased by a family in Vista who thought she was going to be a micro mini, and they got evicted. And unfortunately, they decided to be angry about that. So they trashed the entire home, and they left Emma, who was about 250 at that point. And so we were tasked with getting Emma off the property and into a safe place. And Emma didn't want to leave the property because she lived in the back where the pool was, and she had it good. So that's just another example of the different stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. So we're happy to take some questions if you guys have any.
There's a question: how many dogs have you recovered since the forest? We don't have an exact number to that, and that's because HLE department, we didn't pick up all the strays. A lot of them were brought in by the public. So I believe we will have a number. I'm not sure if they've counted down how many animals have been brought in.
I think we're at 80 as of the 6th, but I'm sure that's going to go up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was just going to say a comment. Your jobs sound very rewarding. So you must be really proud of what you do. And I'm not, I'm proud of what I do, but listening to you guys, that's like above and beyond. So
Appreciate it.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. Is there any way after this to get a hold of any of you to ask further questions or to learn more? Just even after this session?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so in the beginning, we put our contact info, but we can drop it in the chat as well, if that works.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I will share that screen again if you guys want to go ahead and take a picture.
That works.
Give me 1 second.
And then I'm going to send a follow-up email. Would you guys like me to put your contact information in that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think there was another question after that.
Okay, can you guys see this one? Can you guys see that screen?
I can.
Okay, so you guys, so that's Sergeant's press contact information. So you guys can take a picture of that, and you guys can feel free to contact me as well. There's my contact information.
I love your picture.
Okay. So there's one more question. It seems that the ratio of men to women in HLE is more equal than traditional law enforcement. Do you find that to be true? I feel we have more females at the moment in the HLE department. So versus other agencies tend to have more male in their department. So I think we
I think
do
it,
have a lot
yeah, and
more.
if you look at it like that, sure, we definitely do. But if you're really breaking down personalities and, you know, I mean, we draw the people that are the most successful in this are type A, law enforcement driven, but with a passion for animals. So we see, you know, a certain group be more common, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, there are people of all kinds that are really successful in this job, and we definitely do. I mean, we see more females than males, but that doesn't mean that some of our best haven't been males, or, you know, I mean, it just is kind of one of those things that we are hoping that we are giving the opportunity equally to anybody and everybody who felt they, you know, they were meant to do this kind of work, because it's not for everybody. We obviously know that.
Yeah, and there's fun days, and a lot of people, some people might apply thinking, you know, it's all fun, wildlife, all cuteness, puppies. But as you guys saw, you guys have to have like a strong stomach to see the things that we see and deal with the stories that we have to see. So it's not for everyone, like Sergeant Price said, but definitely it's something I wouldn't change. So any final questions? Nope.
And then is your presentation something we can share with everybody as well in a PDF? So if you could email me a PDF of the presentation, I'll send it out to all the people who registered for the class this evening. And then if you think of any other questions, feel free to either email me, or I will put both of their contact in the email as well, so you can reach out directly, but I can always forward on questions if you think of them over time. But thank you everybody for attending this evening. That was a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. And I put the links to the next upcoming lectures if anyone was interested in those topics or wanted to help spread the word as well. But thank you guys so much for sharing what you do. Again, I'm honored to work with you, and you must be really proud of all the hard work that you do for animals and people in our community.
Well, thank you for having us. It's kind of, we're both a little bit nervous about giving it, but then at the end of the day, it's like, well, we're just talking our job. This is what we do. So thanks for listening to us.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
You guys have a good night.
Thank you.